Hello, welcome to LLG's Random But Real podcast, where you'll hear conversations about any and all things random with an entree, not a side dish, of mental health advocacy. I use my performance, communication, and literary art skills to bring awareness about mental health and other topics. Therefore, whether I'm singing, speaking, or writing, it is my desire that my words will be melodic, just like music to your ears. Welcome to LLG. That's me, Lisa L. Gilliam's Random But Real podcast. Please note, any comments made on this LLG Random But Real podcast by myself, Lisa One Singing Lady Gilliam, or my guests are our own views. They are not to be made or determine an actual professional or in lieu of an actual professional. If you relate to any of the topics, please seek professional help. Contact a therapist, a psychologist, any other mental health professional, or if it's an emergency, please call 911. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the third season of LLG's Random But Real podcast. I'm excited to be back, but I'm more excited about being able to speak to my guest today. I was just looking at one of the social media pages, and it reminded me that it's been a year since we have done a podcast, and I marvel and I'm so glad about what God has done this year. Please welcome my guest, Ashely Lockley.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
It's cool. It's been a day. So you all that don't know, we pre-record the podcast, and today happened to be a rainy day, actually a stormy day. And everything that could have kind of happened. But I got in, just a little bit wet, but I'm glad that I didn't blow away with the vehicle because everything was blowing out there. So it feels sunshine in my heart, even though it's not outside.
Yeah.
So the views that we share are our own views. This, if you've never tuned in before, welcome. And if you have, you know that this is really a mental health advocacy platform. However, even though I was a counselor for 20 years, I may use, some of the information that I learned, but this is completely my opinion and my guest's opinion. I am not acting in the role of a counselor or a therapist on this show, just sharing information and ideas. So, but if you do need a referral, please definitely inbox me at One Singing Lady on all social media platforms, and I will definitely refer you. So, today we're talking about the promise. Yay! Ashley, would you like to? Why are we talking
promise, because the promise has been fulfilled, and
Amen.
we are so grateful. The last time I was, as Lisa said, was a year ago, April of 2022. We were about 3 months out of the loss of our child, and very much processing all that had happened, and in a space where I didn't know what I wanted. Not feeling at liberty to really pray about it, to ask I wanted, or to even, say definitively, yes, I would like to try again for another, or no, I want to give myself some more time. So April was really hard last year. And we, my husband and I, celebrated our first anniversary in May of 2022. And I don't know if I shared that we did like a get married thing, wedding in August of 2021. So we originally got married on May 14th of 2021. And so we celebrated our first anniversary, and you know, it went through our first year. It was cause for celebration, and I guess we really did celebrate.
But
um,
all right.
because my doctoral program, and every semester I have to travel to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to do a 1 week. And while I was up for my residency in the summer of last year, in June of last year, that's when I found out I was again.
Mhm.
And was just, I didn't really know what to do with my feelings. But if I'm to be completely honest, I was just very scared. Um, we pretty early in the pregnancy. We were just rounding out the first trimester. And so for this pregnancy, the first trimester was really, really, for me, anxiety inducing. I really, I got back from Philadelphia and told my husband, and we went and got it. This time we didn't tell anybody until after we felt like we were a little bit out of the woods. Um, Even our parents, like we told them like when we first, and this time we waited a little bit. Um, and I think that that's what we would call a trauma response, right?
Mhm.
Something bad happened the last time, and I don't know what's going to happen this time, so I adjust my behavior accordingly in case
Right.
that same thing happens again. And so um, I was turning 35 last summer, and I wanted to do something because 35 is kind of like a,
Mhm.
and I wanted to travel, and I remember Frank being like, "Well, where are you trying to go?" Like we both were very, oh, we gotta kind of,
Apprehensive.
yeah, like I don't know. So we settled on me going to Ocean City because it wasn't too far. If it happens, he would be able to easily get to me, and and so that first trimester, in addition to it at my energy far more than the first pregnancy did. I think the first pregnancy I didn't really feel the drain, but this pregnancy I really couldn't. I could hardly keep my eyes open trimester. So even I think if I wanted to be a little bit more active, it just wasn't going to happen because I was going to be somewhere asleep. And so and so we at the 10-week appointment we were able to confirm that there was a viable heartbeat and all of that. If you go back and listen to um, the previous episodes, that we weren't even at that point with Neely. And when people get pregnant, um, they don't even see you prenatal appointment until you're 10 to 12 weeks. Um, and that's for a number of reasons. Um, you know, us who may be high risk for one reason or another, that can be pretty anxiety inducing. So they will see you a little bit earlier than that 10 to 12 weeks. But, if you're at 10 to 12 weeks, you're rounding out your first trimester. And so um, I think we were 9 weeks when they, come in, do the first sonogram and all that. And when everything looked good, then it was like, whew, but wait,
Yeah.
we haven't gotten to the point yet where in the pregnancy where we lost meat. So when
Mhm.
we got around the 11, 12 week period, it was like, I can breathe a little bit better, and
Right.
that was right after my birth. Like, please, God, I just need a little bit of a break. Not going to bother you too much if you can just, on your dear servant, because I can't.
Do you
Um,
remember how you told me, Ashely?
I don't know where we at
I was
first
moving.
watch.
No, I had
I,
to move. I was moving, and no, that was the
yes,
other way. And she's the
yes.
type of person that she will try to help even when she don't need to or whatever. And so she was just like, I would love to help her. I can, you could, take my car, but I can't move anything because, and I think I don't know if I screamed, but I was just so happy, because I know, I've been with her through this struggle, but maybe not like with her because they did, both times, choose who they decided to tell and when they decided to tell. And I know that anytime Ashely is apprehensive or slow to like speak, so to speak, pun intended, that is for a reason. And so I don't know. She's probably the only person probably in my life that gets a pass for not telling me information from jump. But I know that, I know the struggle. I know not personally, but just through her experience. And when you care or love someone and you know that they want something so badly, like I really was like believing God with them that this
Mhm.
was going to take place. And I know that that doesn't happen with everybody. And so, um,
Absolutely.
what would you say to someone who was in you all's position and just really doesn't have the words to, like you said, you did, not really wanting to pray, not that you lost your faith in God, but just, that broken place. What would you say to someone who's been there or
I
is
think
there?
right. I think it's important to process, and we say that a lot, but it is painful to process.
Hmm.
Um, I had to be okay with some days I was just not going to be fine. Some
Right.
days I'm going to be screaming at the sky, literally screaming at the top of my lungs. I remember um, the first menstrual cycle post um, pregnancy loss. I I because the last time I saw that amount of blood, I was losing my baby.
Hmm.
It is, you go to the bathroom and you just like, things that just were very mundane can be just very triggering. And if you're not in a place you're able to look the pain in the eye and say, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm going, I have to contend with this so that I can really get to a place where I'm okay. And when I say mean that it erases the pain, it doesn't mean
Right.
that you're at a point where you can say, oh, I, that we're moving on,
Right.
no,
But that's, can I
you
just interject? The moving
yeah,
on and
sure.
moving forward. I just shared that
Yes.
with someone who was sharing me. And I learned that in grief share, moving forward is still moving forward with the process with that person in mind that you lost. Moving on is like forgetting about it, just like, trying to
Right.
get it out your head or whatever. And I think that that's part of the process. And most of us try to move on and don't really try to move forward. So I just wanted to interject
Right.
that. Okay, continue.
Absolutely. And I think because generally speaking, we are not really comfortable with grief. Um,
Mm,
People aren't really to legitimately grieve. And we put people on these very artificial timelines, and we're expecting them to kind of snap back to a former version of themselves. When you loss, grief and loss, you emerge a different person, a different iteration of who you are. And that doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of your world, but
mm,
it does require that you have people around you that understand that you're forever marked. Um,
Right.
and it's, I think, harder for people to do that with parents loss, specifically, when it was earlier on in the pregnancy and you hadn't started to see the person, you know, grow, or like we lost Neely in the first trimester when we hadn't even started sharing why pregnant. And so it it's especially hard, for that, because people are just like, well, you know, get to
Mhm.
practicing. And it's like, no, I literally lost a part of myself.
Right.
And I did that. I lost a part of myself in my house. I
Yeah.
have to be in this space day in and day out in my bathroom, and I'm like, I don't know, you know,
Yeah.
and that is just the reality, and it's human to be in that space. But I do believe that um, when we talk about, we really have to allow ourselves to be acquainted um, with our grief, and that we sit in one space and are comfortable with just like there. But if
Mhm.
we don't allow ourselves to process, we'll never be able to get where we can experience some sort of fullness of joy, right? um my um was as great as it was, even through the anxiety of it. um I had taken the time to process the loss of Neely.
Mhm.
And also, and if other people didn't look at it this way, me, and Frank, we know that Judah, baby, now, he is not a replacement for Neely,
Right.
right? He is not, because you've had Judah, now Neely never existed. No, Neely was a child, and he or she was our child.
Right.
And my body has experienced pregnancies, even
Mhm.
if I have one living
Congratulations.
child, right?
Right.
So um, there are a lot of nuances in the ways in which we operate when it comes to things like this. But I would say, just thank God that I had, access to things like counseling, and a person who I have no problem with taking medication if I need it. And
Mhm.
I know we haven't gotten to this part of the story. Postpartum, I had terrible, terrible postpartum anxiety and depression after Judah was born. And I had to get on some medication to help me, because I didn't want to get to a point where I did anything to harm myself or my baby.
Right. Right.
Right. And so these are really don't talk about, specifically in faith communities, because it's like, well, you should just trust God that, he'll take care of you. What
Yeah.
if you is allowing you to be able to utilize resources?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
And I don't know why we don't want to focus on that, or or don't think that's important. And I do believe that God created therapists and psychologists and social workers, just helping professionals and psychiatrists, which specifically deal with the medication aspect of mental health. I would say there's in a nutshell, for a reason, and that it's okay if that's what you need, to actually take the medications. It's okay to
mhm.
have talk therapy if that's what you need. I just think it's important to get the help. And I've spoken to several people. I hope some of them listen today, who may not have experienced, pregnancy loss, but they've experienced loss, or they're struggling and they won't even seek any type of help and expect for things to change. And I just don't think that that's smart. But who am I? Just been in the field for 20 years plus. But I think that it's commendable that you are willing to put your money where your mouth is. For those who don't know, Ashely is studying to get her doctorate. As she said a little bit earlier, in a therapeutic field. And you can specify that if you want to, Ashely. But a lot of us that have worked in the field sometimes don't do right by what
Mhm.
it is that, we say, or we
Mhm.
share with other people and their needs. So I think
Yeah.
it's a good thing that you do it.
Um, yeah. So I'm currently getting my PhD in therapy. So very very much apropos for this subject, right?
Hmm.
Because grief, you know, grief and loss is very rarely something that just affects an individual. It does extend network. So whether that's their family, whether it's, co-workers at work, whether it's, when people experience grief and loss, it not just impacts them, it impacts the people around them. And
Right,
so
absolutely.
we do have to, I think, um, evolve our understanding of grief and loss to a place where it really allows for um, the people that are intending to who are in the thick of grief and loss to really understand how to operate in such a way that they helping in the healing process and not doing unintentional harm, further harm to them.
Yeah,
And I know that
absolutely.
that is something that, is near and dear to you, Lisa. We talk about this a lot. People really
Hmm.
don't know how to exist with other people's grief.
Right. Or they
Um,
don't want to. Either one.
yeah,
Because it's
yeah,
hard. It's
yeah.
hard to see somebody that you love or say that you love and watch them, in a sense, crumble, at least for the time being until the help is received. I think
Hmm.
that that's a difficult thing, definitely.
Yeah.
I just happened to look why when you were saying that I was curious just how many marriages or I guess relationships end after pregnancy loss, and it said married or cohabitating couples who had a miscarriage were 22% more likely to break up as opposed to couples who had a healthy baby at term. For couples who had a stillbirth, this number was even higher, with 40% of couples ultimately ending their relationship. And this is just on Healthline, and it's talking about pregnancy and miscarriage and lost pregnancies and lost loves, how miscarriage impacts your relationship. And I know other people, other friends who have lost their child. I know one who was actually stillbirth, and, as well. And I can't imagine either situation. Either having to basically abort the baby because, or not allow the baby to come to full term because they had already died. In a sense, as you shared in the other podcast, or just they are born, went through the whole process, and then they're not crying when they come out of your womb. They're, stillborn. Like
Hmm.
either way has to be extremely difficult. I mean, just from what I've heard, the loss of a child, a parent living past a child anyway, in any situation is difficult. But I think that we do have to be willing to have these conversations so that people understand. Like you said, Neely was still a child. It was still a baby. It was still, um, a person that was going to be born that just didn't unfortunately make it to full term on this side of the earth, and that the parents, you and Frank, and then all those who are associated and love you, are also grieving loss too, and not just move on like it didn't happen, because it did. And
Right.
as you know, grief has ebbs and flows, and I think that's all grief. And so there may be times moving forward where the triggers of something causes that. But just, I know that you're loved. I know you're surrounded by people who care about you and that will be there. And again, I just want to encourage you not to, you or anyone listening who's gone through that or goes through this even after the fact, that you're not alone. You don't have to be alone. There is help available and support available. if you want it. And hopefully, those that are listening do.
Absolutely. That is definitely that's definitely my hope. Um, Frank and uh I'm so grateful because, through our process was an original point where we just kind of we were grieving our own ways, and it was hard for us to see each other. And I'm gonna be honest, it was harder for me to see him than it was for him to see me.
Hmm.
Sometimes, as the person who carries the child, you it's easy to or it's easy to underestimate your partner, your husband's grief as well, because it didn't happen in their physical body, right? And it's not that I assumed that Frank wasn't, but
Hmm.
I am the cry, scream, lay in the bed, the sometimes burrow my head down and just keep going. Um,
Hmm.
and in the aftermath of the miscarriage, I interpreted that as him being just very it. It's not that didn't feel feeling anything, but it's almost like I wanted him to scream with me.
Hmm.
Um, and not where he was.
Right.
And that's not how he was processing. And as someone who has experienced a lot of loss in his life, he has learned how to deal with certain things, things like death, a certain way that has worked for him. And he was trying it and trying to be there for me. And I didn't, I don't think I could, because I was just in the thick of my own grief, my personal
Right.
grief.
Right.
And so I could see how, if two people are not strong communicators, or, one person looking at their grief one way or processing their grief another way, and the other person is processing totally different. And neither one of them can say, oh, let me try to see where the other partner is coming from. I can see
Mhm.
how that could put an enormous strain on a marriage and even lead to its dissolution. It is
Right.
incredibly, incredibly, I mean, it's difficult. I remember after I ended up having to have a DNC, because my body did not completely um, complete the miscarriage on its own. And it had been a month since the miscarriage process had started, and um, the doctor said, if your body doesn't pass this uh, soon, we're getting in a point where it can get dangerous, because your body can, you're more prone for infection, things like that. And so we made the decision to do the DNC. And that that weekend, um, I just we had been whole pretty much of January of last year grieving, because I had been miscarrying since December of 2021. And I guess I had just hit a wall that after the DNC, and didn't tell Frank where I was going. I just left. Um, and I just needed to like drive and clear my head. And I scared him. He started calling my parents, he called my friends, and I was at Target. My friends look back and it's a joke now, but it wasn't funny then, right? Because in such a headspace where I just wanted to just go. And he knew that I was grieving, but we hadn't been able to communicate since the DNC. And at that point, it had only been 2, but that wasn't our norm. You know, from the beginning of our relationship, we communicate. You know, and that is a strong point for us, and I'm grateful. But after the procedure, I shut, and in me shutting down and isolating myself, it allowed for these feelings of being alone to kind of grow and fester. It was like, you know, he don't care. I'm just go. I'm walk out. And you know, when he called out, I didn't answer my phone. It really alarmed him, and then of course, it alarmed quite a bit of my circle.
Right. Right.
And so it is like my friend. I was wondering when my friend was like texting me. She just kept texting me, and I was just like, okay. Like, where are you at? I'm like, I'm at Target. And she was like, don't you think you need to call Frank? Let him know. I'm like, for what? You know, in my head, again, I'm so in my cocoon of grief. I'm realizing that this is having an impact, and everyone was scared because they knew that
Right.
I was going through. And
Right.
also because I've been very open about my past, about dealing with chronic suicidal ideation. They didn't know what happened.
Right.
And so, you know, in hindsight, you know, obviously I was not in a space where I could be really thinking clearly, right? And that makes sense, right? Because grief overwhelms you. It
It
really can overwhelm you. It really, and it really exacerbates all of the negative emotions. Those senses of I'm by myself, nobody cares. Um, it really brings all things to the surface so that they are kind of like those predominant thoughts, those predominant feelings. And so, you know, long story short, I got home, we were able to talk through it, and that helped us kind of get over this little bit rough, kind of happening rough plateau. But, you know, I just think if we didn't have a foundation where we could get back to the heart of communicating with each other, right? It would
So
have
big
been incredible.
takeaway.
I'm
Go on.
sorry.
No, I was saying a
It
big takeaway for that to me is that it, even in the process of grief, it doesn't replace communication. Like you still
Right,
have to communicate.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And not to say that it isn't hard to do so. It is
Right.
incredibly hard to do so. It
Mhm,
is
mhm.
impossible to do so, right?
Right. But
But
who wants to
even
talk
if you're
about?
not right, right. But even if you're not in a space where you can just like words, just you know, like I'm trying to process.
Right.
I just need a few minutes, right? And
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
to do because I was
Yeah.
used to just shutting down and shutting
Yeah.
out,
Yeah. I
right?
think that that's
It's
also important because it wasn't just you. It's both of you in this. Like so
yes,
if it were you and maybe if you were a single person and the father wasn't in the picture or maybe it might be a little bit more understandable, but it's not. And I'm a huge proponent of communication. Like I don't like to be ghosted, rejected, not told, whatever it is that's going on. And I also don't want to be the only person trying to fight to figure out how I can help or how I can be there for a person, whether it's a friend, significant other, whatever. And so I think I always say communication is key. Even at the bare minimum, it's like you just said, I'm trying to process. Just say right now I don't have the words to say, but when I do, I will definitely speak to you. You know what I mean? But
right,
definitely checking in, making sure your significant other knows what's going on, with you in that moment. Just, I don't care if it's a note, hey, I'm going to Target, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But something
Right.
so that they're not afraid to. But I think that's really important.
Yeah. 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 And again, when you're in the midst of grief, you don't always realize how it impacts others, right?
Right.
And
Right.
and you know, can be tempted to believe that they aren't grieving.
Hmm.
Like
I
it
think,
didn't happen
yeah.
to y'all, it happened,
Right. Right.
you know. That it was my
Yeah.
body, and no, my husband lost a child too. My parents, his
Absolutely.
mother lost a grandchild as well, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
their grief doesn't have my grief in order to be real.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
it's hard for you to be able to process that in that moment. You know what I mean? I can look back now and say all these beautiful gems of wisdom, but in January 2022, I didn't give a nothing about
Right.
anybody else but myself, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I needed the space to not care about anybody else either.
Yeah. I get that.
It was
I do.
it was necessary. That was necessary, right? And especially I think because I'm a person who I care a lot about other people and through and how they're processing, even sometimes to my own detriment, right?
Mm,
And
mm.
so have even that small window where I really didn't focus on everybody else, I focused on myself. Now, absolutely, but I needed a moment where I could just, this is about me.
Me.
This
Right.
is about me, right?
Mhm.
Okay for it to be about me. That doesn't make me selfish if I say I am grieving
Right.
and I this time to be able to acknowledge that I am grieving and not worry about other people, right? And so how we live our day-to-day lives really does come into like hyper focus when we're in something that causes grief. Um and it does, it a lot of weight and stress on our general kind of functioning, our relationships, right? And so if we're not generally kind of in a space somewhat healthy, right? Or we don't have things in place that allow us to have good process in place, generally speaking, when something um, like grief and loss, it can really, really put a lot of stress on not just ourselves, but around us.
Right.
Um, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree. Um, I appreciate you being willing to share, your story, your stories. We've had a lot of podcasts and lives together over the um, years, I should say, and everybody is not as open. There's, sometimes there's some fear in how people are going to receive the information. But if there was one last thing that you would like to share with people, that you've learned from the journey of pregnancy loss to fulfilling the promise, what would you like to leave with the people?
Mm. Probably a lot of things. I think,
It can be more than one if you want. That's fine.
no, I mean, I think thing that I would say is when you're able to see the promise coming in, don't be afraid to allow yourself to live in joy.
Mm,
It was extremely difficult for me to um, um, be able to enjoy my pregnancy with Judah. Um, at every turn, I was feeling very, very anxious. And I'm going to be honest, in my head, I was just like, is God going to, am I going to lose this
Yeah.
baby? You know,
Yeah.
and, you know, if I had that anxiety, um, fully, I really would not have been able to enjoy the beautiful pregnancy I had with Judah. I
Yes, he's
mean,
so cute.
it was not without its challenges, but overall, it was beautiful. Um, even his delivery, which was interesting. Um, but I mean, the joy that's on the other side, and on the other side, looking at my baby and his beautiful chocolate face every day and day in and day, joy supersedes the pain most days, you know. And when I'm really able to self to fully live in the joy, I just I marvel at it. And again, this is not have days where the anxiety overtakes me. Oh, it gets terrible. Just told you all that, I've been taking anxiety meds because it got really bad postpartum. But I have been more intentional about taking care of my body and my health. And so doing that, taking my meds, staying prayed up, like really just loving this journey that I'm on currently. And he'll be 3 months at the end, and I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful.
Yay. He's so cute, y'all.
Thank
Yes.
you.
He has cheeks
Thank
like me,
you.
even though we're not related, but I have to do some claiming in there somewhere. He has like the cutest little cheeks. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
um, well, would you like to leave your contact information so if anybody wants to reach out to you, they can do so?
Sure, sure. I'm on Instagram at Ash Lockley. I'm also on Instagram at Mastering Mind Matters. I'm going to be honest, I have not done the best of keeping my social media presence in the past year because I've been busy forming a
Right.
life and being very intentional with these first couple of months that we've had with Judah. So May next month, I'm jumping back into school. I'm slowly jumping back into Mastering My Matter. So if you go to my Instagram page and say, "Well, she ain't posted in a couple months," you know what's going on. All right. So
That is
that's what's
fun.
happening there. Yes, but free to reach out to me. You can email me at masteringmindmatters@gmail.com, or you can visit our website, mindmattersnow.org. Thank you so much, Lisa, for allowing me to
You are
come back.
welcome. You are welcome. I'm sure this will not be the last. And for those who would like to reach out to me, at One Singing Lady, and that's the number one, Singing Lady, and that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. I have been reducing some of my social media pages, just as I do more speaking, for the book that I co-wrote with Tracy, 21 Days. That's been, taking up a lot of my time, but I'm still singing and always,
Book,
well, thank
excellent book.
you.
Go get
It's
it.
go get it. And she's an author too. So she does a lot of things, y'all. I don't know where she finds the time, but I have to remember that, she got me. Like I have her about almost 20 years. It's not completely 20 yet, but it's close to it. And I used to have energy like that when I was in my 30s. And now not so much, but I'm trying. I'm plugging along. It's a little train going up the track. We're getting up the hill, but it's all
That's
good.
what we're
But
doing.
yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. But yeah, so if you are interested, and also being a part of the podcast, because I'm looking for people. Ashely does the flyer for the podcast too, y'all. Told you she does a lot of things. And we're still part of Stigma Breakers. We haven't really done anything, but we are breaking stigmas like individually. But but we haven't been able to do any collective stuff, lately. This year, my birthday actually falls, or my birthday weekend falls on the weekend that we do mental health and ministry. We're not doing that this year either. Not sure what the upcoming years will bring for Stigma Breakers, but you can get our product on both of our websites. We have shirts and cups and mugs and hats and all that type of stuff. So, we would love your support. That means a lot to us. And even if you can't support us financially, if you would just, tag a friend in your post, we appreciate that. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Ashely, for always being willing to be on. I think I asked you, I don't even know what I asked you, but I was like, so I had to wait till everything was settled. I was like, can we talk about the promise on this show? And to make sure she wouldn't, bite my head off, and make sure it was enough time. And she was like, sure. So we have been planning this in the works, and I just knew that it was going to happen. I knew she was going to have the promise. Which was her baby to talk about. So I'm just grateful. Thank you, God, for what you did. And for those who are still struggling from pregnancy loss, my prayer is that God will just comfort your hearts and your minds, and that that
Amen.
there are people praying for you. Yeah, just know that. Just know that. I know
Amen.
one thing. I know really at the end. We have 45 minutes. But was there ever just one scripture that ever ministered to you that we can close out with to the people?
My favorite scripture is Jude 24. Now unto him who is able to keep you from falling and present you faultless before the throne of grace with exceeding joy. And I clung to the exceeding part.
Mm.
I truly, truly know that God is a keeper. And I believe that this past year did that for me. And so that is the scripture I keep going back to, and I anchor myself really using that scripture.
That sounds good. I think Judah agrees. I hear him in the background.
Yeah,
So
but I say you hear Judah, so you can hear
I
the
do.
promise. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again. This has been the first episode of season 3 of LLG's Random But Real. Stay tuned for more. One singing lady out.
Bye.
Bye bye.